Hi, I'm Angel with FleeceFun.com, and today I'm going to show you how to make this apron. I love this apron. This is actually a classic Fleece Fun pattern, but I've updated it. I'm providing a new video tutorial to make the instructions more clear. It is one of those wonderful classic pieces that I love that is on the site. You can see it right back here, and actually, funny story. When I originally did this tutorial, I made an apron for my mom. I made an apron for my mother-in-law, and I had enough fabric left over to make an apron for me. Never got around to it. About 10 years later, finally made one for myself, and that is why you hold on to fabric in your stash. For this project, you will need the following. For this sewing project, you will need 1.5 to 2 yards of cotton, 1 yard of fabric A, half a yard of fabric B for the standard size, 3/4 of a yard for plus, rotary cutter, ruler, and mat, cording, that's optional, thread, iron, sewing essentials, scissors, pins, that sort of thing, and of course a sewing machine. You'll also need Fleece Fun's free PDF pattern that's available on FleeceFun.com by filling out the form on the website. All right, now that you have all those items, it's time to get started. Free apron pattern instructions. Step 1, cut out the pattern. Print up the free apron pattern. You can find assembly instructions on FleeceFun.com's channel or website. Cut out the liner to the cute apron bodice. The liner is the full pattern. Cut down the bodice to the dotted line. Now, this step actually takes a little more fabric if you choose to do it this way, but like on the fabric that I am using, it has these nice little sections or portraits on the fabric, and if you want to feature one of those, take a little extra time and center the bodice on it to feature that. It just is a nice little professional extra thing you can do. A lot of ready-to-wear pieces actually don't take that kind of care with the fabric, but since you are an amazing sewist and you have the option, take a little time and just a little extra fabric and center the bodice on something nice if your fabric has a pattern like mine. Cut one of the bodice front. The same is for the waist piece. Since this will be the front and center of the apron, take a little time to make sure that the placement of it is nice. Cut 1. In addition to the top, you'll need to cut out the following. Cut 3 of neck strap A/waist tie pieces. Be sure to set it on the fold where it says on the pattern. The final pieces should be twice as long as the pattern since it is cut on the fold. You will need to cut 1 of neck strap B, the shorter one. Again, be sure to place it on the fold. Now, one of the points of confusion that was on this pattern is that I don't have the skirt on the pattern. This is because the skirt is a simple rectangle that you just cut out that is the width of the fabric and whatever length you want it to be. So you get to be the designer here. You can either make the skirt longer like it is back here, or you can make it a little more shorter depending how you want your apron to look. You will need to cut the skirt. Using a rotary cutter, cut across the full width of the fabric to make the skirt. The length you desire is up to you. In the example, I chose to make the skirt a little longer. It was about 24 inches long. All the pieces to the free apron pattern are now cut out. You should have 1 bodice front, that is shorter, 1 bodice lining/back, that's longer, 1 neck strap B, 1 neck strap A, 2 waist ties, 1 waist piece, and 1 apron skirt. All right, looks good. Now let's start to press. Step 2, iron to prep the apron pieces. Pressing is very important with this pattern. It will give you much better success. It'll make the seams more accurate. So we're going to go through and press a few items. Ironing is an important step in the free apron pattern. Don't skip it. The 2 neck straps are not the same length on purpose. It's part of the pattern to tie the bow on the side rather than in the back. Taking the 2 strips that will be the neckties, fold each of them in half lengthwise, right sides together, so it makes the strip approximately 1.75 inches wide, and lightly press into place. Set aside. Next, take the bodice lining and press the bottom up 1 inch so wrong sides of the fabric are touching. Set the bodice aside. Now, one of the things that this pattern has is baby seams, or a baby hem, I should say. And a baby hem is basically the cloth folded over twice so it finishes the edge nicely. Now, there are a couple of ways you can do this. You can use a turning foot, which is what I use on mine, or you can make a baby hem. Now, a baby hem, it takes a little more work and a lot more pressing, but it is possible to do without a turning foot. For the waist ties and the apron skirt, the edges need to be finished using a baby hem. This is also known as a turn hem. For the waist ties on the long side, turn the raw edge in 1/4 inch and press. Then turn under once more 1/4 inch and press. This will make the turned hem. Make sure to turn the hem on the ends of the ties, the end that won't be sewn into the apron. Set aside. For the apron skirt, repeat this process for the sides and bottom. The top will be sewn into the bodice, so there's no need. Baby hems are a pain, but it makes the garment durable in the wash and is less expensive / time consuming than bias tape. Set the skirt aside. All right, looks good. Let's move on to sewing. Step 3, make the apron bodice. Gather the front of the bodice pieces, the waist piece, and the cording. Note, cording is optional. Looks nice, but it's optional. Line up the waist piece and the cording with the bodice, right sides together, using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Sew the waist piece and cording to the bodice front. Now let's work on the neck straps. They're all pressed and ready to sew. Starting with strap A, sew it together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Repeat with strap B, again with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Turn each strap right side out. Now it's time to finish the end of the strap for tying. Press the strap flat. Tuck in the end on itself about a 1/2 inch. Top stitch shut. Set aside. Now it's time for the waist ties. If using a turning foot, finish the long edges of the ties plus one end. If you've already pressed a baby hem, simply top stitch your pressed hem into place. Now let's add these pieces to the bodice. Take one waist tie, placing the side that is not finished on the waist piece, center it and sew it on using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Repeat with the other tie. Now center the short strap B on one side of the bodice top. Note, the side that the short strap is on is the side that the bow will go on. Sew into place using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Repeat on the other side with strap A. Nice, the bodice front is put together. All right, looks good. Let's work with the skirt. Step 4, add the apron skirt. Finish the sides and bottom of the skirt with a turned hem. If you've already pressed your hem, simply top stitch into place. Along the top where you didn't finish the edge, make 2 basting stitches along the edge so we can gather the skirt. Before you begin to gather the skirt, mark with a pin the center of the skirt. You can do this by folding it in half and marking the quarter sections of the skirt, folding a half and a half with a pin. This will help you make the gathers more even on the apron. Gently gather the apron skirt. Try to make the gathers as even as possible between the quarters of the skirt. Now let's add the skirt to the bodice. Grab the bodice and turn it upside down. Mark the halfway point with a pin. Fold the half and half and mark the quarter sections of the bodice as well. Note, this is just the sections of the bodice piece and not the ties, so we're just sticking to that one waist piece that we made. With right sides together, line up the pins of the bodice and the skirt. The skirt should end where the waist piece and ties meet. Line up the center and quarter pins, taking time to evenly distribute the gathers between the sections. Pin and sew into place using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now it's time to bring it all together, and it's kind of a little bit of a trick. Step 5, add the bodice lining. This step will bring the free apron pattern together. To add the lining, we want to make sure the straps don't get sewn in wrong. Pin them out of the way of the seam allowance. The seam allowance will be 1/4 inch. Place the apron bodice lining on the bodice front, right sides together. Double check that the straps are out of the way. Sew around the bodice using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Leave the bottom open. All right, now that apron lining is sewn on, we're going to turn it right side out and we're going to finish it off. Turn right side out. Remove your pins. Now, top stitching is important in this pattern because it helps the bodice lay flat and nice. It gives it just a really good finished look. I know you feel like you've probably sewn this apron to death already, but trust me, this last final step just gives it that nice little professional touch. It's totally worth your time. To finish off the apron, top stitch all the way around the bodice. By stitching in the ditch on the front side where the waist piece meets the skirt, it will sew the bottom of the bodice lining shut. Tip: pin the bottom of the bodice lining in place so it won't shift under the needle. Trim your threads, and that's it. You just completed the free apron pattern. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more awesome videos just like this one. And that's it. You have this great apron because you finished those seams properly. It can just be thrown in the wash over and over again, and it'll look great. And it is probably one of my favorite patterns on Fleece Fun. I actually have several apron patterns that you might like, so you should go over there and check it out. I'll have some links below to those as well. And also let me know in the comments below, what is your favorite memory involving an apron?